Imagine you are the oldest person in your tribe. 60 winters, your teeth are mostly gone, your knees scream every time you stand. You cannot run down a deer. You cannot throw a spear far enough to matter. You cannot keep up when the group moves by every single rule of nature. You are a problem. You are an extra mouth with no output. A lion that can no longer hunt starves. A wolf that cannot keep up gets left behind. That is how it works out there for almost every animal on Earth. So here is the question. Why did the tribe keep you? Why did they slow down for you? Feed you food you did not catch? Carry you when you could not walk? Protect you when you could not protect yourself? Here is the strange part. They did not just tolerate you. They needed you desperately. The old, slow, toothless human turned out to be the single most valuable thing the entire tribe owned. More valuable than the strongest hunter, more valuable than the best spear, and the reason why is the reason you are alive today. Watching this on a device, in a civilization that an old person accidentally invented. Now, before we go anywhere, we have to kill a myth, because you have definitely heard this one. Ancient humans died at 30. You have seen it in textbooks. You have heard it in documentaries, and it is technically a number that is completely misleading. Here is what actually happened. Yes, the average life expectancy was low, somewhere around 30 in a lot of ancient populations, but an average is a trick because back then, a huge number of babies died before their 5th birthday. Disease, infection, a bad winter, and when you average in a pile of deaths at age 2, the whole number crashes down. Think about it like this. If one person lives to 70 and one baby dies at 0, the average is 35, but nobody in that story was actually 35. So here is the truth the average hides. If an ancient human survived childhood, if they made it past the dangerous early years, they had a very good chance of reaching 60, 70, sometimes beyond. We are not guessing about this. We can look at their bones. Skeletons from the Upper Paleolithic show us plenty of individuals who lived well into old age. And there is a famous study by 2 researchers, Kaspari and Lee, who counted old adults in the fossil record and found that around 30,000 years ago, the number of people surviving to be grandparents suddenly shot up. Old people did not just exist, they started to become common. And that, it turns out, changed everything. So think about that for a second. The picture in your head of a caveman world where everyone died young is wrong. There were old people around the fire, wrinkled, gray, slow, which raises the obvious question. If they could not hunt and could not fight, what on earth were they doing there? Okay, so here is where it gets good. I want you to imagine a world with no writing, no books, no phones, no Google, no hard drives. Now ask yourself a simple question. Where does knowledge live? In a world like that, it lives in one place, inside human heads, and specifically inside the oldest heads, because the old person in the tribe was the only one who remembered. Think about what a long life actually stores. The old woman remembered the drought, the one from 40 years ago, when the river dried up and everyone panicked. She remembered which valley still had water that year because she was a child. When it happened last time, the old man remembered which berries killed his cousin. He remembered the winter so cold. They had to move the whole camp, and exactly where they moved it to. Now here is the part people miss. The most important knowledge was not the everyday stuff. Everyone knew how to find food on a normal day. The priceless knowledge was the knowledge of the rare disaster, the flood that comes once every 50 years, the famine that hits once a lifetime. Because when that disaster finally arrives, there is only one person left alive who has seen it before and who knows what to do, the oldest person in the tribe. So when an old person died, it was not just a death, it was a library burning down, an entire lifetime of survival information, gone in a single breath. We actually have proof this mattered. Aboriginal Australians have oral stories that describe coastlines that existed over 10,000 years ago, before the sea levels rose and swallowed them. 10,000 years passed down, mouth to mouth, elder to child. No writing, just memory. That is the human library at work. And yes, I know what you are thinking. The old man who tells the same mammoth hunt story for the 400th time is deeply annoying. But here is the reframe. That is not an annoying grandpa. That is a backup server running the same file over and over, so it never gets deleted. Repetition was not senility, it was data storage. Still, a library is nice, but is it nice enough to feed and carry someone for 20 years who cannot feed themselves? Hold that thought, because there is a second thing old humans did. That is honestly even stranger. Here is a fact most people never stop to think about. Human women live for decades after they can no longer have children, and that is genuinely weird. In nature, almost every animal reproduces right up until it dies. That is the whole point. Biologically speaking, you exist to pass on your genes, then you are done. So why would evolution keep a female alive for 30 extra years? After she stops reproducing, it makes no sense, unless she is reproducing in a different way. This is called the grandmother hypothesis, and it goes like this. A grandmother cannot have more babies of her own, but she can do something almost as powerful. She can keep her grandchildren alive. Picture a young mother in the Ice Age. She has a newborn and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. She physically cannot feed all of them and forage enough and watch all of them at once. It is impossible. But then grandmother steps in. She digs up roots. She carries the toddler. She watches the fire. She feeds the ones who are already born, which frees the mother to have another baby sooner. Now run that forward. Over hundreds of generations, the families that had grandmothers raised more surviving children than the families that did not, which means living a long time. Being a grandmother was not a biological accident. It was a survival strategy that got selected for. Humans might be the only ape that evolved to have grandparents on purpose. Let that sink in. Your ability to grow old, to live long past your reproductive years, was engineered by evolution. Because old people made the babies survive, the grandmother was the original daycare, the original knowledge transfer department, the original safety net, all rolled into one wrinkled, unstoppable human being. Now, I am not going to pretend it was all warm and beautiful, because it was not. You have probably heard the story of old Inuit people being left on an ice floe to die when they became too weak to travel. And here is the honest answer: that mostly did not happen. It is largely a myth. And when something like it did happen, it was in the most extreme conditions imaginable, starvation level scarcity, when the group would die otherwise. It was tragedy, not tradition. Because when we actually dig up the evidence, we find the opposite. We find something almost unbearably tender. There is a Neanderthal skeleton found in a cave called Shanidar in what is now Iraq. We call him Shanidar I, and this man was a wreck. He was blind in one eye. His arm was withered and probably useless. He was likely deaf. He walked with a severe limp, and he lived for years like that, which is only possible if other people fed him, protected him, carried him, chose to keep him alive. There is another one called the Old Man of La Chapelle, a Neanderthal so old he had lost most of his teeth. His jawbone had actually reshaped itself where the teeth used to be, which means someone was preparing softer food for him for a long time, so he could eat without teeth. These are not just old bones. These are some of the oldest evidence of compassion in the entire human story. A moment hundreds of thousands of years ago, where a creature looked at another creature who could give them nothing back and decided, you are still one of us. We are keeping you. So here is the uncomfortable question. Was that love? Or was it just useful? Were they keeping the old man because they loved him, or because he was a library, a map, a memory? And here is the answer that I think is actually true. It was both at the same time, and that combination is exactly the moment something new was born on this planet. So let us tie the whole thing together, because this is the part that reframes everything you just heard. Think about every other animal. For a lion, a wolf, a deer, a bird, old age is an ending. It is the slow slide into being useless, then being left behind, then being gone. But humans did something no other species did. We took old age and we turned it into a job. We looked at the weakest, slowest members of the group, the ones nature says to abandon, and we made them the most important. The elder became the library, the daycare, the map, the memory, the judge, the storyteller. We are the only species on Earth that gets more valuable to the group after we stop being physically strong. And this is the secret engine of everything, because think about what it unlocks. Humans have something scientists call cumulative culture. It means each generation does not start from zero. You start from wherever the last generation left off. You inherit their knowledge, their tools, their discoveries, and you add a little more and pass it on. That is why we went from stone spears to rockets in a cosmic blink. But cumulative culture only works if someone old enough to remember is still alive to hand it down. If every old person died the moment they got weak, the chain would break. Every single generation, the knowledge would leak out and reset, and we would still be sitting in a cave, reinventing fire over and over. Forever. So here is the twist. We did not build civilization. And then, as a nice bonus, start caring for our elders. We started caring for our elders. And that is what built civilization. The decision to keep the old man by the fire is the decision that led to everything. The grandmother is the reason you have a smartphone. So here is what this means for you. For 300,000 years, the old person was irreplaceable. They were the memory, the storage, the wisdom, the one thing you could not survive without. And then, very recently, we did something no humans had ever done. We invented writing, then books, then hard drives, then the cloud. We built machines. To do the elder's job, we are the first humans in the entire history of our species who do not need our old people to remember things for us. We outsourced the library to Google. We outsourced the map to a phone. And that raises a question that should genuinely make you pause. What happens to a species that spent its entire existence treating its elders as essential the moment they become optional? Because that transition is happening right now. In your lifetime, the old person in your family, the grandparent, the elder, is still running the same ancient software. They are still a library, still a backup, still a memory older than you are, full of stories and disasters survived and lessons learned. And for the first time ever, we can just not listen. For 300,000 years, the smartest thing humans ever did, the thing that separated us from every other animal, was refuse to abandon the ones who could not keep up. The question is whether we still remember why. If this changed how you look at the oldest person you know, go call them before that library closes, and I will see you in the next one.